the way I eat is already weird and not normal. So like the fact that I like, the fact that I like love like super salty anchovies and like fish skin and liver and stuff, like people would be like, you're already in the weird category. So like, we can't really take you seriously. But I do remember in the beginning, the first trimester, I definitely craved more salty stuff, and I'm definitely more of a sweets person. So that was interesting.
Today's episode is with repeat guest and co-creator of the Muscle Science for Women program, Ashleigh VanHouten. For those unfamiliar with Ashleigh, she is a health coach, podcast host, and author of one of the only nose-to-tail organ meat-centric cookbooks in existence called It Takes Guts. Ashleigh holds a master's degree in professional communications and has a range of certifications in nutrition, physiology, and strength training. She is also a former nationally ranked natural figure competitor. So in today's episode, Ash and I are chatting about her pregnancy journey and how she's approached both her nutrition and her exercise over the last 9 months. We also dive into some of the outdated advice on what's unhealthy during pregnancy and why it's important to find what you are personally comfortable with versus what the mainstream media might be telling you. We also do a brief recap of the Muscle Science for Women program, what we learned, some of the results and feedback from members, and what we're excited about for the future. It's always a fun time chatting with Ash, and I know you're really going to enjoy tuning into this conversation. Let's get into it. Welcome back to MetFlex and Chill. I am here with the one and only Ashleigh VanHouten.
Yay! Hi. It's been like 2 weeks since we had an hour-long like deep dive conversation, so I've been missing it. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I am stoked to chat again, as always. I feel like this is your 100th time on the podcast.
We're like honorary co-hosts for each other's podcasts at this point. I mean, it is what it is. Like, until people tell us to stop doing it, we're going to keep doing it because it's fun.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we usually get pretty good feedback, so hopefully that says something.
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. Well, if there is anybody who might not know who you are, which I'm sure is a little bit rare right now, do you want to give just a quick background, who you are? What makes you so special and awesome? What makes me special?
Well, for anybody who hasn't heard the 10 other podcasts, 20 podcasts we've done together, I am a health coach and a podcast host and a cookbook author. And I come from a sort of ancestral health, paleo kind of background. And I wrote a book all about the health benefits of eating nose to tail, specifically organ meats, which is maybe that's the one thing that makes me special, just because it's pretty unique. It's pretty niche. But I feel quite strongly about nutrient density. I feel strongly about teaching people about how to nourish their bodies and feel good in a way that is bioavailable and normal and natural and healthy for us. So I wrote that book during the pandemic, and it's been a super, super fun, cool process, and seeing people trying new things and eating food that makes them feel good is very rewarding to me. So I've got another cookbook on the way that's maybe a little more mainstream. It's more like protein heavy, because anybody who's listened to you and I together knows that that's a very big sort of part of what we both do, is promote really protein forward, healthy diets for men and women, and diet and workouts that really kind of nourish people and make people feel good and strong and functional in their bodies. So that's really what I'm passionate about. And that's what I try to do with the podcast, with my books, with my coaching, and of course with the programs and the work that we do together. So that's it.
Awesome. So I'm sure people are wondering what the heck we're going to talk about today, since we usually have different topics, at least from the past. We did some Q&As, we did some deep dives into muscle building for women. So do you want to give us your special announcement and kind of set the scene for what we're going to chat about today?
Special announcement. I'm going out for tacos after this. Is that special? Okay, fine.
That's pretty special, to be honest.
I mean, it's not even a Tuesday, so it's special to me. But anyway, yeah, it's still weird to talk about, honestly, but I am like currently 400 months pregnant. I'm 9.5 months pregnant. So I'm due like any week now, any day now. And it's something
hopefully not today.
Hopefully. Well, it was funny because we were talking offline about what good ratings this podcast would probably get if I went into labor while we were talking. I'll let you know. He's definitely been kicking and moving around this entire time, as he always does, but he's not coming out anytime soon, I don't think. Anyway, but it was something that I kind of really kept to my close circle for basically up until very recently, just because I kind of felt like it. I just sort of felt like going through the process in a more intimate, private way. But then at a certain point, I knew that it's like, it's a little bit weird to never share something that's this big of a deal. And at some point, people are going to notice that I have a child. And that's going to be a part of some information, I think, moving forward, because what you and I love to do is learn and share our experiences and get experts on the podcast who can help other people. And so I knew that at some point I wanted to share some of my experiences going through pregnancy and then childbirth and everything that comes after and all of that exciting stuff. But I kept it kind of close for a while. So I'm just starting to talk about it now and share some stuff. And it still feels very new and strange, but I'm very excited. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm very excited as well. It took me a lot to keep my mouth shut and not like blow it either on, social media, but
no, I'm very proud though. My friends, obviously all of my friends and family have known. It was really just like not announcing on social media. And I was just like, if we can get through like 9 months with nobody accidentally like leaking it, it'll be a small miracle, but we like collectively did a pretty good job. It was pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and you made the announcement like right at like just getting to 9 months, right? So I don't know how you hit it for that long, but
it's funny because the fact that this has been during the tail end, hopefully, of this crazy global pandemic did make it easier because I was out less. I wasn't traveling for work. I wasn't traveling for fun. I wasn't at a gym because the gyms have been closed for a year and a half. I've really been pretty close to home. And so not a lot of people are seeing me. And generally up until very recently, if I'm just from here up on my podcast, people can't really tell. So it really wasn't actually that difficult to hide, but it does, now that I don't have to hide it, it's better because I think I waited until 9 months because it's a very apparently common phenomenon that you hit the final month of pregnancy and you're just kind of over everything. Like you have no energy and no sort of time for anything that's superfluous. And I was just like, let's just let it out now because I don't have any energy to continue to hide it or whatever. Here we go. Here it is. So I'm just throwing it out there. Yeah.
That's awesome. And I really loved the photos that you took, your pregnancy photo shoot. That was awesome.
I mean, it was very on brand for me because it's, I knew I wanted to take some pictures because of course, if you want to, you feel inclined, you should commemorate this is a crazy time in any person's life. And similar to we've taken fitness photo shoots and all kinds of stuff. And when you're going through a really intense physical transformation, it is fun and cool to have memories of that. And I've never undergone a physical transformation, anything like this. Losing 15 pounds and getting a 6-pack for a bodybuilding show is cool, but it is nothing compared to what's going on right now. So it was really cool. Yeah. And I was like, not for me. I'm not judging anybody else, but it's not really my style to put flowers in my hair and stand in a field. So I was like, I'll just go to the beach and see if I fit into any of my bikinis and just let it all out. It was nice to not, be sucking in my stomach for a photo shoot for once because I can't. So Yeah, it was really fun. It's cool. It's been an interesting, I mean, that's like, that could be a whole other podcast, is talking about the body image side of things and watching your body change and all of these things, because it really is a unique experience in that, you know, we talk about bulks and cuts and bodybuilding shows and all of these things all the time, but those are things that you have a very high degree of control over, right? Whereas this is something that certainly you're controlling a lot of variables in your life, but a lot of what's happening is not anything you're doing or controlling.
Yeah.
So you kind of wake up every day with different things to deal with, and you just kind of have to roll with it. And it's very interesting. But it's been a cool process so far.
Is there any like one specific thing that you like can remember, like recall back to like the last 9 months that you're just like very surprised about, whether it was just like, it could be anything at all. I'm just curious. Like,
well, I mean, for me personally, one of the things, you know, anybody who is listening to this, man or woman, I think knows a lot of the like typical side effects or typical things you hear about what a pregnancy is like, in terms of being tired or being nauseous, or sometimes your hair grows really fast, or sometimes you get acne, or like there's good and bad. There's all kinds of weird things going on with your body, right? And I was fortunate that I didn't really have a lot of the typical like first trimester nasty side effects. But one thing that I have been dealing with, and it's something that I plan on covering in a couple episodes in my podcast, because I'm going to be getting some professionals on to talk about, but I did have one kind of, well, I'm still dealing with one sort of long-standing challenge, which has been it's called pubic symphysis dysfunction and or pelvic girdle pain. There's kind of like a whole range of issues that's going on with sort of your pelvis as you grow and stretch and things move around in your body. And it's been really challenging, at times really painful, totally unexpected. Like I thought, okay, maybe I'll be sick for a couple months and then maybe I'll be tired, and so I won't work out quite the same way. But I've actually been dealing with like pretty significant chronic pain for like the duration of my pregnancy, which again is like, you know, it shows how naive I was, but like, I figure, okay, I'm an athletic person, I'm a fit person. Like the last thing I'm going to be probably worrying about is like muscle aches and pains, like all this other stuff. Sure. But it ended up being something that was completely unexpected. That was sort of my biggest hurdle, my biggest challenge, which I'm still continuing to like work on and try to work through. So that's been something that surprised me, because I didn't see it coming. I didn't think it would happen as quickly as it did, as bad as it did. And I've been doing a ton of research and exercise and stuff to sort of combat it. But I think any woman who's listening who's been pregnant has probably heard of it. Not everybody gets it. But I got it like real bad. And it's been impacting my life for sure, but also like my workouts and stuff like that too. So it was definitely unexpected.
Yeah, for sure. That's annoying. I can't say I've experienced anything like that yet.
Sucks.
But yeah, I want to dive into just your training a little bit in a second, but let's chat a little bit about nutrition. So in terms of like pregnancy nutrition, was there anything, you know, that you like thinking back, you know, before you got pregnant? Like obviously there's the traditional things that we want to focus on, you know, prenatal health, all that stuff, but you know, then and then throughout your pregnancy, was there anything specific that you made sure that you really focused on, or maybe anything out of the norm in terms of nutrition that you can share with us?
Yeah. So, I mean, I want to like preface this, of course, by saying like, you know, I'm not a doctor and I'm not a nutrition professional. I mean, I feel like I know a fair bit, but you know, I'm not your nutritionist, right? So anything I'm talking about here is my experience. It's anecdotal. It's also based on research. And I think that what I'm going to talk about is my own personal experience, as well as some things that I would encourage people to look into and do their own research on. But it's not me saying, you need to do this, you should do it, because, you know, let's just use common sense, liability. I don't want anybody like, MetFlex and Chill. Ashleigh told me to do this. And you know what I mean? So anyway.
Yeah.
And I also do feel like a little bit weird almost talking about it like before the baby comes, because like, I've had a generally healthy pregnancy. Everything is going great. I anticipate that everything will go great. But I'm still in the process of like learning and figuring things out. And like, this is all very new to me too. So I just prefacing it all by saying like, of course I'm doing an insane amount of research and I have a background in this stuff, but like, I don't really like, I'm a beginner at all this too. So anyway, had to put that out there. Prenatal nutrition is certainly important. And, I was reading that it's advised that people take prenatal vitamins and you eat a certain high nutrient density way for a year before you get pregnant or even try to get pregnant, all this stuff. I mean, I didn't do any of that. We didn't have a very long, like from our like conversation, like, hey, let's try to do this to getting pregnant was like a week. Again, fortunate. That's not for everybody, that it doesn't come that easily to everybody, even healthy people. That's another thing that's sort of like a misconception around fertility is like, if you're healthy and you eat well, there shouldn't be a problem. And in a lot of cases that's true, but it's not always the case. So I'm not saying that, eat organ meats, you're going to get pregnant in a week. Like these things, there's so much that goes into fertility and biology and genetics, and even like the two people coming together and how that works. Like it's so complicated. But for us, it happened very quickly. It's very little effort. So anyway, and I do think that being a healthy person who takes care of myself and eats really well and eats very nutrient dense foods, I think that certainly helped. I think it certainly didn't hurt. And I continued to do that. So, the biggest running joke was everyone was telling me that I would have meat aversions during pregnancy and I wouldn't eat any organ meats. I'd be grossed out by them because meat aversion is actually a pretty common one in the early months when your hormones are kind of going nuts. And this, I think it's HCG hormone is really high, and that can impact your appetite and make you feel nauseous. I didn't really have much nausea. I had like a couple weeks at the beginning where my appetite wasn't what it normally is, but I was never really sick. And I never had any aversions to meat. So I just kept eating high protein the entire time, kept eating organ meats. I will say I'm probably eating less. Like I probably make some like chicken liver mousse or chicken livers, once a month. And I'll have some heart and I'll have some tongue tacos. Like I'm eating pretty much the same, but maybe not quite as much. And I'm not quite as into like beef liver per se. I'm like going a little bit more on the like mild end of the spectrum because again, your sense of smell is heightened. Your sense of taste is heightened. So things are a little bit more intense when you're pregnant. So, but with that said, my diet really didn't change that much. I still am eating very nutrient dense, high protein, mostly paleo. The biggest change probably that I did, and I did pretty much immediately, was I ate more carbs. I started eating more carbs. And it was partly because my body just wanted them and I was following my cravings. And you do need more energy because you're creating a human. It's a lot of work. And I just didn't see the need for me personally to maintain like a quite low carb diet while I'm trying to build a person. So I got a lot more flexible with my carbs, and I still, again, am mostly eating unprocessed carbs. I've eaten a lot more fruit during my pregnancy. Normally I never eat fruit. We've talked about this. I don't crave fruit. And I'm like, hey, if I want sugar and carbs, I'm going to splurge and eat a chocolate bar. But I've been really craving fruit. And it's interesting. It's so crazy how when you're pregnant, this has been my experience. Your body gives you signs that are so much more clear than when you aren't. And we've talked about this in our course together. We've talked about this in the podcast, that it can be a real journey to listening to your body, hearing what it's telling you. It's not always easy. This concept of intuitive eating or knowing when to stop eating or knowing what foods to eat. It isn't always black and white and cut and dry for people, right? Like I've said, even in the past, like if I listened to my body, I'd be eating a lot more ice cream and cookies because that's my body tells me to eat that sometimes, right? But in my pregnancy, like I would have a day where I'd be like, I need to eat kiwis. Like I need to eat a kiwi right now. And I don't crave fruit. I don't even know where that comes from. Yeah. And then I'd be like Googling it and it's like kiwi has XYZ thing that your body really likes when you're pregnant. And I'd be like, what? Like that's nuts. So it really does give you strong signals. And I think one of the things I just did was I just totally went with it. Instead of having any thoughts of like, oh my God, I don't normally eat this much fruit, or like instead of eating my eggs and avocado, I'm eating eggs and avocado in a wrap. I was just adding carbs everywhere. And I really just wasn't feeling bad about it. I'm just like, this feels right. This feels good. It's making the food palatable. It's filling me up. I feel good about it. So I'd say that's kind of the main thing, like mostly still eating all the nutrient dense stuff that I ate. And then I just was throwing carbs on top of it.
Yeah. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with fruit. Like we need to squash if people are still thinking like, fruit is quote unquote bad because it's mostly carbs and, sugar. Yeah, but it has tons of nutrients. Like that is just something that I have a huge pet peeve about as well, because I did go through myself a period of time. I was like, oh, I'm going to stay away from fruit as much as possible because it's high in sugar, carbs, blah, blah. But fruit is not the devil. And it's like what you're saying, you're increasing your carbs is coming from fruit and things like, I'm sure like sweet potatoes and stuff like that. Curious with the kiwi, because that's something that it's like a newfound for me. I've been eating a whole kiwi on the way to the gym as kind of like my pre-workout little snack. Well, my second pre-workout snack, I guess you could say. But do you eat the skin?
I don't. Do you? I think I remember seeing on your like story or something, you eat the skin. I'm like, what a weirdo. But I can't really say that because I eat weird food all the time. Are you supposed to eat the skin?
So the skin has a ton of nutrients in it as well as the kiwi itself. So there's like, it's kind of funny if you look at the hashtag, there's a hashtag on Instagram. It's like eat the skin or like kiwi eat the skin or something. You'll see like a bunch of people posting like hashtag eat the skin because it actually has like tons of nutrients that you miss out. And it seems weird because it's like, seems like it's hard and kind of like.
And furry.
Yeah. But if you can get past that, honestly, it's like, it's not even like, it tastes good to me at least.
You're preaching to the choir here because that's what I tell people about liver. I'm like, liver's kind of intense, but if you can get past that, it's really good for you. Yeah. But I feel like that's the case with a lot of fruit, right? That we don't eat the skin. And to be fair, animal products too. Like I've had this like conversation with people who will get this delicious piece of like super healthy salmon and they'll cook it in this delicious fat and they get this nice crispy skin and they pull the skin off. Yeah. I'm like, what are you doing? That's the best part. The skin is the best part. It's tasty. It's full of fat. It's full of like collagen, all this delicious stuff. Anyway, I have a couple kiwis left in my fridge, so I will try the skin and I will report back.
Yeah, let me know. And the same thing with salmon. I was the same way. I was like, I kind of grew up like when I did eat any seafood or salmon type things, we always took the skin off because it was just like, skin, that's gross. But if you cook it the right way and you like obviously source it from a good place, like the skin has tons of nutrients.
Delicious.
So yeah, eat the skin.
Yep.
On everything.
Yep.
Mostly. I wouldn't eat the skin of a banana, but.
Well, I think even like, what is it like? Maybe like thinner skinned, like citrus and stuff even. Like, I mean, I guess you can, if you zest it and like put it in your desserts and stuff, I mean, you're eating it. So it makes sense, but
yeah. And like certain squashes, like I'm going to bring up Kabocha squash. We know that I'm obsessed with that. Seriously, I'm going to tell you this right now. Like I have eaten Kabocha squash every single day for over a year.
That doesn't surprise me.
Maybe there's a few days, like when I was in Hawaii, for example, that's the only period of time where I could think that I wasn't eating Kabocha squash. But you can eat the skin of the Kabocha squash. It seems really hard, but when you bake it, it like you can just put a fork through it and actually has a ton of nutrients in the skin. Just like delicata squash or whatever. There's some that aren't, like spaghetti squash. You wouldn't want to eat the skin of that because it's super hard. But anyway, now that we're going through every single food group and what you can eat and not. So I have a question. Did you have any specific, like anything weird cravings, like for one specific food that's like kind of weird? No?
I think it's hard for me to say because again, anybody who knows me and knows the way I eat would say that like the way I eat is already weird and not normal. So like the fact that I like, the fact that I like love like super salty anchovies and like fish skin and liver and stuff, like people would be like, you're already in the weird category. So like, we can't really take you seriously. But I do remember in the beginning, the first trimester, I definitely craved more salty stuff and I'm definitely more of a sweets person. So that was interesting. And the only
any like combinations of things that are weird?
Nothing weird.
No,
nothing weird. And I really do. Again, this could be, people could be listening to this and say you are totally full of crap, but I do think that sometimes some aspects of aversions and cravings are because you are deficient in something and it's telling you like, you got to eat this stuff like pickles and ice cream because you need salt and you need, fat or calcium or something. You know what I mean? So the fact that I came into this, I believe I didn't get my like blood taken before I got pregnant, but I came into this like, again, really focusing on nutrient density. And I don't believe that I had any major like nutrient, micronutrient, vitamin imbalances. And so I think that does contribute to why my body wasn't like, oh, you got to eat this weird thing, because I was generally, I believe, getting what I needed for the most part. With that said, I definitely do have a couple like long-standing unhealthy cravings that have lasted with me through the entire pregnancy. My husband says he's very proud. He was like, I was worried that you were going to like tear the ass out of this and like use this as an excuse to just be like pregnant, eating a bunch of crap and like, and I really haven't. I've been pretty proud of myself, but I think one of the reasons why I didn't, again, and this relates to non-pregnant people, if there's any, men or people who don't plan on becoming pregnant still listening to this. I think one of the reasons why I didn't succumb to any like crazy cravings or binges or anything like that is because from the very beginning, I allowed myself to be more lenient in general. So you and I have talked about this before, how it's so much easier to be one end of the spectrum or the other. It's so hard to be moderate and in the middle and like give yourself a break, right? So it's easy for me to eat super strict and then have a day every once in a while where I'm like, I'm going to make so many mistakes today and just be a nightmare, right? But that's not always the healthiest cycle. It doesn't, it can create kind of systems of like, I'm bad when I do this and I'm good when I do this, and, guilt and all of these kind of things. And it doesn't for everybody, but it can, right? But for me, when I immediately was like, I'm going to be okay with eating more carbs. I'm going to eat a sandwich every now and then. I'm going to eat some toast. I'm going to eat wraps. I'm going to eat like carbs with most of my meals instead of maybe only one of my meals every day. And because I gave myself that permission, I wasn't feeling like I was restricting myself. I wasn't feeling like I had to wait until this day when I couldn't take it anymore and I have to eat a bunch of crap. So I really didn't have that issue generally. But again, with that said, the two like garbagey foods that I would eat probably all day, every day. And if I'm going to have like, if someone's like, hey, treat yourself, let's do this. It is a breakfast sandwich, like not like a healthy one that you'd make at home, but like from a fast food place. Like I want bacon, egg, and cheese on like a English muffin. Okay. I would eat that for every meal for the rest of my life during my entire pregnancy. And hey, there's healthy stuff in there. Eggs, whatever, protein. Okay. Breakfast sandwich. And then cinnamon rolls. I just want to eat a cinnamon roll. But again, I sort of feel like that even when I'm not pregnant. Like it's really not that. Yeah. I might be using it a little bit as an excuse. So I've had a couple cinnamon rolls here and there. But yeah, and I mean, I'm just kind of, it's been like in many facets, it's been an exercise in giving yourself a break, being okay with not being perfect, surrendering to some things, while at the same time also caring about your health, and paying attention to your body like you always do. And knowing that I'm not just nourishing myself, I'm nourishing someone else too. And that's important. So
Yeah.
It is,
sure.
it's a balancing act, but it's been all right.
So call me crazy, but it sounds like you are pretty metabolically flexible from what you've been talking about in terms of, you went into your pregnancy already consuming, carbs in moderation and things like that. And you weren't like super low carb or keto or anything. You were just in that kind of balance. And that's something that I've heard from some people, like especially with keto being something that has helped a lot of people get pregnant, right? Being able to balance a lot of those things. There's been some women who have struggled with being very low carb keto and then actually going into their pregnancy in that way, not really having any flexibility. And then they get these, like, their body telling them, hey, like, give me some freaking kiwis, and they don't know what to do. Have you seen that at all? Or like, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess mostly I just think that, it sounds like one of these annoying, like, advice-y things that people give to pregnant women or women who want to become pregnant. But like, this is not the time to agonize over your macros, and it's not the time to be afraid of upping your calories. It just isn't. It is a misconception that you are eating for two. You're not eating for two. And I really didn't find myself, like, people were like, were you so much hungrier during your, like, if you aren't sick, like, are you super hungry and do you find yourself just craving food all the time and blah, blah, blah. And first of all, I didn't. Again, that wasn't my experience. And I think partly it's because I was not in a place where I was so restricting my food, which is what so many women do to try to achieve whatever kind of, body composition goal they're going for. And then when they have this added stress of creating a person, they become so hungry, and they sometimes get overwhelmed and don't know how to deal with it. And then they're eating so much, maybe. I was eating a lot to begin with, because that's what I'm aiming for, is always how much healthy food can I eat and get away with and still look the way I want to and perform the way I want to. That's the mindset that I have had for a fairly long time. So I didn't find myself eating a ton more at any stage in my pregnancy. Like, and I'm not tracking macros. I'm not tracking calories. Here and there, I would go on like MyFitnessPal just purely out of curiosity and be like, what am I even eating in a day? And I would check, and I was eating, which turns out to be pretty standard fare, a couple hundred calories more a day than I normally would. And even then, it was probably on the lower end, because I also was compensating for the fact that I am not working out nearly as much, moving nearly as much. So it's almost like the energy that I was putting into working out before, I'm now channeling into building this person. So it really didn't end up changing like my calories or my intake very much. But I would just say, like, I follow some of these like pregnancy chat groups, and I could go down a whole rabbit hole about some of the misinformation that's being spread over there. But people do, and I understand that people are worried because you're seeing a number on a scale you've never seen before, and maybe your body is changing in a way that is alarming. And if you have a history of being really, really sort of hyper-focused on how much you're eating and what your body looks like pregnancy can be a really tough time. But I guess I just try to remind people that, like, this is temporary. The priority isn't how lean are your arms. Are you in ketosis? The priority is, are you healthy? Are you nourished? Is your baby healthy and nourished? And if there's ever a time to just relax a little bit, eat the things that feel good to you, listen to what your body's telling you, this is the time to do it. And I will also recommend anybody who's listening, who's interested in the nutrition side of things for pregnancy, to follow a woman. Her name is Lily Nichols, and she wrote a book called Real Food for Pregnancy. And it is sort of it's like kind of like the gold standard that any functional medicine or person who isn't like standard American diet will tell you, like, go follow Lily Nichols, read her book. She also has a book, I believe, called Real Food for Gestational Diabetes, because that's another issue that can come up that we could talk about or not during pregnancy. But, and her outlook does tend to be, again, lower carb probably than the traditional standard American diet, the traditional how pregnant women are supposed to eat or told to eat, which is, again, all processed carbs. You're nauseous, so you're sitting and eating whatever you can get down. It doesn't matter what it is. She tends to advocate for a very, what looks to me like paleo, higher protein, higher fat, relatively lower carb, but not low carb, not restricting carbs, just not carb forward, and her stuff is really, really good, really well researched. She has a ton of valuable information. So I highly recommend, if you want to really, learn about this from a real expert, to follow her. But yeah, I mean, I've done things like probably pretty differently than, like, again, kind of mainstream, like in terms of like the things they tell you not to eat, right? Like I follow these, and this is, again, take this with a grain of salt. I'm not telling everybody go out and like smoke cigarettes while you're pregnant. Like, come on. But I'm on all these chat groups and everyone's like, oh, what are you most excited to eat when you finally aren't pregnant anymore? And everyone's like, oh, I'll finally have a cup of coffee, and I'll finally eat a piece of sushi, and I'll finally have some deli meat. And I'm like, I've been eating that stuff the entire time because, and I have a midwife. And my midwife even was like, again, these are all like, you have to use your own discretion, or like runny eggs, right? You can't have any egg with any yolk that isn't like cooked to hell. And a lot of these rules were created really when food safety concerns around these types of foods were very different. And, things like salmonella or, just food poisoning from not good fish and stuff like that was like a legit concern. That risk is incredibly low if you're eating, again, decent quality food. You have a higher chance of getting salmonella from unwashed salads than you do from eating, some deli meat from a good place or high quality sushi. I mean, sushi these days is almost exclusively flash frozen to get rid of the bacteria that could be problematic. So like I was weighing the pros and cons. I'm like, when was the last time myself or anyone I know got sick eating sushi? I cannot think of a time. And for me, the risk was low enough that I was willing to have some sushi. I'm not eating it every day, but I'm having some sushi. Do you think that every woman in Japan stops eating sushi when they get pregnant? That's their diet. That's their cultural diet. And it's probably a hell of a lot healthier than a lot of what North American women are eating when they're pregnant. Cheese is another one. So people say soft cheeses are really bad for you. But if you do a little bit more research, you dive into it, pasteurized milk, again, we can have the conversation about whether pasteurized milk isn't ideal because it's, heating it and killing a lot of the good and bad bacteria, but it's killing the bacteria that could be more problematic to a pregnant woman with an compromised immune system or a lowered immune system. I've been eating cheese. Like, again, I'm not telling anybody to go out and crush sushi and cheese. I'm just saying, do your research, because there is a ton of information out there that is very old, very fear-based. And I kind of refuse to just wholeheartedly buy into a narrative that tells you that don't eat beef liver while you're pregnant because of vitamin A toxicity. Don't eat sushi because there's a 1 in a million chance you could get salmonella. But if you're feeling shitty, just go to the, grocery store and buy all the cookies and cereal and chips and ice cream and just crush that. You'll be fine. Your baby will get what it needs. Like, I'm not buying that. So anyway, that's my rant.
No, it's true. I mean, if you just think about it freaking practically, and like, it just makes complete sense. So one question, because you did mention coffee, just curious, you drink coffee or?
Yeah. So the general kind of consensus these days tends to be that up to around 200 milligrams of caffeine a day is acceptable. And that's, of course, again, what you normally tolerate. Like if you're really like very sensitive to caffeine, there was interestingly enough, like one of the only things I had an aversion to early in my pregnancy was coffee. For a couple weeks there, I was just like, no, thank you. And I stopped, and it was, I had a headache for a couple days and I was fine. And even these days I'm drinking less of it. Like I'll have like a decaf iced Americano 3 days out of the week. But I have my coffee in the morning. I mean, literally like nothing. I have not changed or restricted anything that I eat. The liver thing is another thing too. And I got messages about this on social media. They're like, like organ meat queen's got to stop eating the liver because it's bad for, like vitamin A and stuff. But, it turns out that this vitamin A toxicity that people tend to be more worried about is, a result of studies that were, it was synthetic vitamin A, like supplements. And so often with things like iron toxicity or vitamin A toxicity, so often we're talking about synthetic supplements or pills because it's really hard to get toxic levels of these vitamins and minerals from eating foods, especially foods that are not hyperpalatable. You would have to eat so much liver for that to become toxic in your system over such a prolonged period of time. So the couple ounces of liver every few weeks that I'm eating and that I generally advocate for, the chances of that being problematic is far outweighed by the benefits that you're going to get from eating this incredibly nutrient dense food that I basically considered it my prenatal for the years leading up to me getting pregnant. I mean, so anyway, I think it's, again, do your research, but I think that there's a lot of really old fears based around a lot of these foods that aren't really founded.
Yeah, for sure. And sometimes, like it's with anything, nutrition, exercise, anything like that. Like if you go on Google and you start Googling these types of things, like you're gonna get the old or the information that might not be, super beneficial. So like you said, do your research, like dig deeper, find people that you trust who are talking about this, go listen to Ashleigh's podcast and more recent studies too, right?
Yeah. Because like, again, a lot of these things, like the stuff about the sushi, it's like, again, it's this like North American, we think that what we do is normal and what everybody else does is weird. And like, there's entire massive cultures that are arguably much healthier than us that are eating these foods that we think are dangerous all the time, and just because we're used to eating processed food and it kills us more slowly, I guess, than like botulism might. We think that it's okay to eat like garbage food all the time. But again, so like find some people that you trust, find some research that's a bit more recent. And it can be very difficult, right? Because we don't all have the ability to parse through some of the like technical stuff. That's what makes it difficult. We aren't all reading like scientific journals. So I get it. It's not easy. But I think, again, if you kind of feel like you're getting overwhelmed by this stuff and you're freaked out, don't eat anything that if you have if you're squicked out by like eating sushi while you're pregnant, don't eat it. It's fine. You don't have to. But it's also not this terrifying, dangerous thing that we've been led to believe either. So it's always good to just kind of keep it to basic principles. The same way we talk about people who aren't pregnant is like, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you don't know what's right and what's wrong, just go back to basics, healthy protein, healthy vegetables, healthy fats, eat the things that make you feel good. And, the rest is just details.
For sure. No, that makes total sense. Okay, so there was another huge project that you were kind of undertaking while you were growing this human in your body over the past few months, which I want to kind of end on and chat a little bit about. So our Muscle Science for Women program course, 12-week course. I think that's the last podcast we actually recorded together was all about the Muscle Science for Women. I believe on my podcast, that's what it's labeled, Muscle Science for Women with Ashleigh VanHouten. If you haven't listened to that one, go back and listen because we talk about a lot of stuff. So we had a very successful, I would say, program. So I do want to chat a little bit about that kind of as we end here. Kind of talking about some of like the lessons that we kind of learned and some of the takeaways that we got from that program and maybe some things that we can talk about that might help any woman or man really listening to this podcast or watching this podcast some main takeaways that we kind of found from the participants through the program, lessons that we learned. So do we want to just talk about a few of the maybe lessons that we learned in terms of like, you know, our anticipations going into the program and kind of what we thought we were going to expect, and then some outcomes that were maybe a little bit surprising or things like that?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea because, I mean, I think that was one of the cool things that you and I mean, first of all, it was so rewarding. And again, I'm just so like grateful that we got to do it. I'm grateful that we got to do it together. I'm pumped to continue to do it and grow it. I was so happy. I mean, I don't want to say I was like surprised at how well it did because like I thought we did a pretty good job, but I was really like humbled and excited and happy that like people were as excited about it as we were. So I feel really good about the first round. But with that said, we did learn a lot as we went through, and we, I think, got some feedback that's going to help us continue to make it better. And then, just getting feedback from people, because again, ultimately this course, I think of it as being a very thorough and in-depth look at women's health regarding trying to get stronger and grow muscle, right? But within that, there's all these other elements of nutrition and mindset and recovery and sleep and all these things. But the feedback we got, we were like, okay, here are some things that tend to be like sticking points or common concerns or areas of interest that just keep coming back, right? That maybe we didn't know until we started getting the feedback. So it was, it was a real good learning experience for us too. And maybe, I don't know if you want to start because I've been talking a lot, so.
No, that's your job. You're on my podcast. You're the one who talks. But some of the things I know you're talking about off air were just like the nutrition aspect. So obviously the course was structured towards like really diving into building muscle and kind of the components of that. And we also had, other things like you mentioned, recovery. We dove into considerations for women in terms of like hormones and things like that. And we did start out with giving them, I think it was like a 55-page nutrition guide that we wrote, that basically we just put all of our education into when it comes to, fueling to build muscle. And we also incorporated, different goals, whether your goal was to, build muscle, maybe lose a little bit of body fat, or just go into like a building phase or cycle through these periodizations, or just, stay at maintenance and focus on that. I think one of the biggest things we found that people had different goals. And one of the main ones was that they still wanted to like really interested in, changing their body composition. Right. So like the nutrition aspect was a huge part of it. Do you have any takeaways like that you kind of saw from like that nutrition component of it?
Yeah. I mean, basically echoing what you're saying, that people, I think, came into it pretty clear that our focus was like, we're going to teach you how to build muscle sustainably. And nutrition is a significant component of that. Probably a little bit more significant in the program, in the course, was the programming, right? Like the actual programming and the progression and the periodization and like the actual movements and all of those things. But nutrition is a huge part of it too. And people like over and over again. So every other week we did a live Q&A, so everybody could join us and we could ask questions and really hash things out, which I love that part of the course. And it just seemed like, people came on and they were like, oh, what about this with the program and movements, etc. But more often people were like, am I eating enough protein? How do I eat enough protein? Like, I kind of want to cut too. Like, can I do this and still lose weight? And how do I, so there was still so much of this, like, how do I eat? Which in some cases came out like that was sort of the priority, like the body composition, how to eat to change that was taking priority over maybe the muscle growth or the strength building part of it, which again is not a bad thing necessarily. It just kind of, I think it showed us that maybe there's space for almost either two complementary courses or like an offshoot, or like if you're really focusing, because, we even had a couple people who were like, I want to do a body recomp. Like, I want to get super lean. I want to do the, and we're like, that's not really what this program is. Like, the nutrition component that we created, I think is quite comprehensive, and there's lots of information there. But the focus of every week was not, here's how we can get you as lean as possible. And if that's something that you kind of want, that would have to be almost like a different thing. Because, you know, we've talked about this before, and you and I might be on slightly different parts of the scale on this topic, but I tend to think like, focus on one thing at a time. You know, yeah, you can build muscle and like lose a little bit of fat at the same time, but it's so difficult. And you'd probably end up getting to where you want to be faster if you just focused on one thing first, then the other, instead of trying to do everything at once. So, yeah, I mean, I think the nutrition part was huge and it was good. And I'm glad we got to talk about it. It just, I guess, even knowing that it's a huge part of women's fitness and how we feel about ourselves, I still was kind of, I was still kind of surprised that like there was just more of an emphasis on how do you eat rather than what you're doing maybe in the gym or in recovery to build that muscle. It was interesting.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things I did notice though that I thought was super, super cool is that, you know, we talked a lot about nutrition as well, because those are the questions we were getting. But the really cool thing that I found, especially at the end when we were reading like the final feedback, like our survey, a lot of people were like, I was finally able to be comfortable eating more, and I actually saw my body change. And so that's something that we emphasized a lot, especially with building muscle. Like, you need to, if you want to build muscle, you have to fuel appropriately. So, you know, these women kind of began to understand that as we, you know, hammered it into their brains, especially the first month of the program. And so they started trusting the process. They started eating more food, and they started seeing their body changing in the way that they wanted to change when they weren't eating more. So that's a ton of the feedback we got. Like, I have two testimonials here that are each like a sentence long that I want to read at the end, because they kind of encompass the feedback that we got from a lot of other people. But one of the main things in that was that literally I can eat more and, you know, feel so much better, have so much better recovery, you know, work harder in the gym and see, like, I saw my body composition change in the direction I wanted. So they did, you know, either lose body fat or they just continued to, you know, build muscle, but they were fueling appropriately rather than restricting and trying to change their physique. And we kind of, you know, went through how that is just a recipe for disaster and spinning your wheels. Like, you can't build muscle on no fuel. And so I think that's what we wanted to get across going into the program, especially like the nutrition component side of it. But I think that we actually, like, a lot of people actually took that and were able to see the results that they didn't expect, which I thought was super, super cool. Cause that was like one of the main things that I wanted to make sure I got across, cause I made that mistake for for a long time. So yeah, I don't know if you had anything to say on that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that was like one of the things that made us feel the best. And it's always cool too that, like, again, I don't think either you or I kind of has the attitude of like, we know everything, listen to everything we say. I think that one of the reasons that you and I love this job is that we know that we're constantly learning too, even when we're teaching, and we are willing to, you know, open our minds and understand that we don't know everything and we're trying to figure things out too. But when we actually get folks to try something different than they've always done, even when they're scared, even if they're skeptical, and they have a positive reaction, and it just opens up these like synapses in their brains to like what is possible. Like, I can eat more and like look better and like have more energy, and you know, people can tell you it over and over again forever until you're ready to try it. And then you try it and it works. And it's like this revelation, and it's just so exciting. And the other thing similar to that we were getting some like really awesome feedback, and like, we're not just going to toot our own horns here for like the whole last bit of this podcast, but one of the things that was like, it was like emotional, I think, for both of us when we were getting some of the feedback from people on the like weightlifting exercise side, that they were just like, I just feel so much more confident when I go to the gym. Like, I go into the gym and I don't feel like I'm the one who shouldn't be here. I don't belong. I feel stupid. I feel like people are looking at me. I'm worried about how much weight I'm lifting. And people are saying like, I know now that it's more about, how I'm moving this weight and the focus and the intention and the muscle contraction. It doesn't matter if there's somebody over there lifting more weight than me. I feel like I know what I'm doing now. I feel like I can go in there and feel good and enjoy it and be present and like give this like gift to myself of going to the gym and working out really hard. And I love that so much because, and I know you feel the same way, like the gym is my happy place. Like you go there to just feel good and feel in your body and work hard and get all those amazing endorphins and get sweaty and feel better and grow. And it sucks when people want that experience and they go and they end up feeling defeated or confused or scared or, discouraged. And to go through this process and just feel a little bit more of that confidence, like, I know what I'm doing and I feel good. And I feel like I'm in here to learn and get better. And I enjoyed this workout. Like that was just so awesome to hear. It made me so happy. So that was my favorite part of it for
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Like just hearing the word confidence over and over again from people like throughout the Q&A calls and things like that, like that was the biggest thing. And even, we had probably half of the people in the program were actually, not even going to a gym. They were working at home and they still had that, new confidence. And, whether it's the confidence of just, feeling comfortable with the weights they're lifting, or really, I heard a lot of people saying like they understand why they're doing what they're doing, which was our huge intent. Like, not just following a plan and not knowing what the heck you're doing, but like, why am I doing this? Because when you understand why, then you're like, oh, okay, now this makes sense. Now I'm confident in what I'm doing because I can understand like I should be doing this to, especially with the goal of hypertrophy, like I should be, focused on working this specific muscle, not maybe moving as much weight as possible, but actually focused on the intent and the tension and all of that. Versus, just not understanding. So, I just want to read off two of the feedback really, really quickly. Someone said, I learned so much and feel like I can do this on my own now instead of constantly buying challenges to try to get in shape. My confidence in the gym and how I hold myself in my normal life has gone up. I can actually eat and still see changes. I've learned how important rest and protein is, and it has really changed how I feel. So that encompasses like a lot of what other people are saying as well. And then the other one was, the greatest gift of this course was the confidence that it gave me to not need to rely on the next great new workout program. It was so valuable for me to learn to drop my ego, to focus on the particular muscle I was trying to use. And whenever weight happened to allow me to have good form and execution, that was the weight I used. The number doesn't matter. My muscles can't tell the difference between 20 and 30 pounds, but I will get way more out of my workout doing the movement correctly with 20 pounds than by trying to impress anyone, including myself, by using the 30 pounds. Ashleigh and Rachel are great coaches and leaders. Anyone would be lucky to learn from them. So yeah, that.
I love it. I love it so much. And I mean, the other thing too, I got to say, this is very unprofessional, but my laptop's going to die really soon. So yeah, but what I wanted to say, piggyback off that, was that we aren't selling anything that is completely brand new. Like we aren't recreating a wheel. That whole, like, I got to find the next fad workout. What we're doing is we're putting together something that is lacking because it's comprehensive. What you said, it's telling people not just what to do, but why we do it and why it works, and providing resources that you can continue to learn on your own. And you can, if you're skeptical, you can keep continuing to learn in this direction. And then of course it's having access to us in another community where you can have accountability, and you can also have support and resources. But like, we're not telling you, hey, we've got a secret over here that no one's told you yet. Yeah. It's about putting it together in a way that makes sense, that's progressive, that you can learn from, that's not overwhelming, that's clear, and that's for you. It's not for the dude next door. It's for you as a woman. Like that's what makes it, I think, unique. So anyway, that's super exciting. The feedback is, it just made my day. So awesome.
Yeah, I'm really excited for the next round to come. We don't know exactly when that's going to happen, but if you are listening to this and you want to get on the list to be notified, you can just go to metflexlife.com/MSW. We'll add that link to the show notes. Before your laptop dies, do you want to tell us and our listeners anything that you have that's coming up that's exciting and where they can find you on social media?
Yeah. So thank you as always for having me. You're the best. And I love working with you and chatting with you and talking about squash with you. Basically, I'm going to be like, maybe lower key for the next couple of months because I'm having a baby. However, the podcast is still going. It's still going to come out every week. I've preloaded a bunch of episodes with amazing people. So you can still check out Muscle Maven Radio anywhere you listen. And I just finished up the first draft of my second book. So the exciting new protein forward cookbook that'll be coming out sometime next year. So I'll continue to kind of share about that. But basically it's the podcast, my book, It Takes Guts, all about organ meats. You can get that anywhere books are sold and highly recommend it. And I'll still be around, I'll be on Instagram. I'll be continuing to share and really just, and I guess the next thing will be sharing my sort of postpartum journey and recovery and getting back to feeling like myself and getting fit again and kind of starting from scratch a little bit, which is going to be very exciting and then ramping up for the next Muscle Science for Women. So just keep checking in with me on Instagram at the Muscle Maven. And
awesome.
That's it. I'll be around.
Hell yeah.
Yep.
Well, this was awesome as always. And I'm sure I'll have you on again, in the next few months.
Please. What else am I going to do? Come on.
Yeah. I want to see the new little guy. I know when I first got Lilo, we were like putting her on camera, little puppy. And I was like, all right, we need to get your baby on
It was
ASAP.
my favorite.
So
we can both bring our little babies on the podcast. It'll be really cute.
For sure. Awesome. All right. Well, as always, it was amazing talking to you and I will chat with you soon.
Thanks, Rachel.
All right. Bye. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of MetFlex and Chill. I hope you enjoyed it. It would be awesome if you could give this show 5 stars and leave a review on iTunes. We're trying to get placed in the top 100 health podcasts, and the 5-star ratings and reviews are what can help make that happen. I'll add step-by-step directions for leaving a review in the show notes. I know it's a big ask, but it really helps. Thanks again. See you next time.